Konami's Gradius franchise first started off in the arcades 30 years ago and ported to various consoles, but the one we're dealing with is for our beloved NES.
That's right, folks, it's the quintessential 8-bit port of the definitive arcade shmup, released not long after its inception. So the basic plotline is as follows. It's set on the aforementioned title Earth-like planet, and it's been laid siege upon by the ruthless hordes of a deadly extraterrestrial/amoeboid race known as the Bacterions. Now it's up to the top-notch state-of-the-art technology and arsenal of the Warp Rattler, codenamed Vic Viper, not to be confused with the Rolling Thunder knockoff by Capcom, also known in one later iteration as the Parodius 911, as it launches headlong into the cosmos for the most rigorous and epic journey ever, to eventually reach the Bacterion's main super fortress, Xyrus, and do away with its main organic mother brain. Once again, not to be confused with the antagonist from Metroid, considering both titles were released the same goddamn year. Getting to the rudimentary gameplay and controls, it's much more than just your standard shmup, almost similar to Irem and Home Data's Squoon, again released the same damn year, except there you take control of an underwater submarine, not to mention William's Defender, except you're not navigating at your own free will both sides horizontally, or protecting any stranded astronauts. Or better yet, two other Konami classics from that same era, Scramble and Super Cobra, the latter of which is the follow-up to the former, minus the acquisition of extra fuel upon destroying its tanks. Comparisons out of our system, you're wiping out every enemy in the way, no matter how big or small, through 7 two-part stages, while others go longer in later iterations. The first part of your current stage consists of navigating through space, obtaining red power-up capsules from certain enemy crafts, to accessorize your ship in the form of a power meter. Your power meter consists of 6 items and or benefits, if you will. Whenever you obtain a red capsule, along with everyone thereafter, depending on how many you've collected thus far, pressing B allows you to activate selected benefit, and take note, you have to collect each and every single one in order to experiment with another, and so forth. First things first, speed up makes your ship travel faster. You have missiles which are fired off from the bottom, a double in which your ship fires off 2 normal shots, one forward and another upward at a 45-degree angle. Then you've got your laser, a powerful as hell beam that tears through a multitude of enemies and barriers, and does way more damage than even the normal cannon shots. Then there's your options, or multiples as it was initially referred to, in which your ship summons an orb of light that follows it around, complete with the same level of firepower, thus providing an extra amount. And in terms of limitations, this particular NES port, or Famicom, lets you carry up to 2. Whereas the arcade version and later 16-bit iterations, sequels, spin-offs, what have you, allow up to 4. And finally, your mystery power-up, in which it summons a shield, popping up in front of your ship in the form of 2 energy fields, thus safeguarding it from enemy contact and or damage for several hits. Now take note, your shield disappears after the final hit when it turns red. The blue capsules, on the other hand, do away with every fucking enemy on screen. With the obvious exception of having your aforementioned shield active, it doesn't take any more or less than a single solitary enemy and or projectile for your vessel to get totaled. Same story if your ship sideswipes with any goddamn landscape portion. Thus your ship is reverted back to shit-all during the next life, with no choice but to regain your enhancements from the get-go and tough out every next assault that lies ahead. The second part is your main event stage, including variations of the following backgrounds, ranging from the wilderness, with the other variation being upside down, the Stonehenge, Moai World, Bacterion Space and Amoeba Caves, and finally the Xyrus Fortress. They are inhabited beyond imagination by all sorts of intergalactic adversaries, ranging from the earlier stated enemy crafts and its supporting bases, living Moai heads firing off energy rings. Of course their weak point is nothing less than their fucking suckholes. And of course you've got amoeboid Bacterion beings, life forms, and the like. At the end of each stage, a boss confrontation arises, beginning with either of the following instances: A, an environmental disaster, in the case of the first and fourth stages of volcanic eruption, or B, a random enemy onslaught, followed by a massive as hell Xyrus Big Core spacecraft, simply but with gobs of effort, exterminated by taking out its row of barriers, and eventually its center weakness area, hence its name. Every other stage, with the exception of the last 2, ends with that very same confrontation, followed by yet another 2-part stage cycle, and then it's rinse, lather, repeat until the 7th and final. As blatant an understatement as it is, or turns out to be, it's easier goddamn said than done if you want my virtuous yet competent as hell opinion. In terms of controls, namely B and A to activate your desired power-up on the item meter, as mentioned previously, and fire both your cannon and missiles respectively. The setup might throw the user off at first, not to mention the aforestated power meter system, but they shouldn't be too much of a burden to confront, and the gameplay routine's a hell of a cinch to grow accustomed to. No ifs, ands, buts, or maybes about that. Concerning Gradius' challenge, as straightforward as this and every other game up for discussion tends to be, expect a high-octane, maximum rage quit frustration frenzy. Like most shmups, your ship starts out in an unsubstantial state. Eventually, as you enhance it, your Vic Viper's a force to be reckoned with. I mean, Christ atop a pile of towed SUVs doing a headstand. The Millennium Falcon, the USS Enterprise, and even the Galaxian and Galga spaceships are fucking baby toys compared to even this BAMF of a vessel. Refer back to the life and power-up loss penalty, since it ties in very closely with this game's challenge. Despite having to start back at a certain checkpoint within the stage, this game will extremely fuck up your senses and judgment, worse than an all-out street riot. Luckily, there's a continue command after you've lost your final life, which will be mentioned later. But take note, that shit only works once. My only word of advice, just cram your ass off for every next possible enemy location and keep your ship well protected at all costs. Simplistic as the graphics are, judging from more than just the traditional space background, they're countless light years far from atrocious, no pun intended. Most of the stage foreground elements and enemy designs were rather enthusiastic and vivid, despite the latter coming off as rather revolting, beguiling, what have you. Mostly in the case of the later adversaries. All in all, Konami never disappoints in any way, manner, shape, or form concerning this department. Same story with, yep, you guessed it, the music. Composed by the fabled Miki Higashino, based on her original arcade soundtrack, also of Life Force, aka Salamander, the original arcade Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, alongside Izumi, Gradius 3, Nightmare aka Majo Densetsu, and even Contra 3 and Madara 2, alongside Masanori Adachi and Tabi Iwase, and even Tokimeki Memorial fame, though the overall symphonies can be a mixed bag, definitely not the third-rate kind. They all intertwine with each other, and do a fantastic job of implementing the moods of desperation and intensity no matter which part of the game you're wrapped up within. As for the sound effects, I'm considering looking the other godforsaken way, but they're otherwise decent for their age. My personal faves from this game alone are as follows: stages 2, 4, and 5, along with the boss theme. Concerning Gradius' replayability, thanks to not only the fair, if sometimes nerve-wracking beyond comprehension, level of challenge that it provides, but also the strategies with which you're able to utilize and analyze, no rhyme intended. You'll be immersed into this and every next outing up for review in more ways than one could possibly envision.
Exhibit B, Life Force, aka Salamander, released 2 years later. It's basically a spin-off of the first Gradius game, and just like the last game we looked at, this is also directed from arcade port. And take note, this has jack shit to do with the Tobe Hooper film of the same name.
The story continues right where the previous installment left off. A new adversary surfaces within our beloved universe. Enter the Zelos Force, and its multitude of nightmarish, not to be fucked with monarchs. Hence, Vic Viper is out yet again to put an immediate standstill to their ambitions, this time with a companion from a neighboring planet, Latus, fully armed with his, or her, all-new Lord British craft, or alone, depending on your preferences. Theoretically, in terms of gameplay and controls, it's the same spiel as the previous installment. Of course, a crap ton of drastic changes had to be made, mostly concerning the game mechanics. For instance, there's also 2-player mode here, except the only difference is that it's a simultaneous play, similar to Contra, and none of that Mario-inspired, alternating turn-based horseshit standard like in the first Gradius, not to mention the second or the third. Oh fuck no. Also, the button setup's been shifted. B and A now fire both your cannon and missiles, and activate your desired power meter benefit, respectively. Compared to the original arcade Life Force, aka Salamander, where your ship enhancements and weapons appeared in the form of their respective parts, the same Gradius-inspired red capsule/power meter system applies here in the NES/Famicom version. Same story with the enemy eradicating blue capsules. Also, replacing the double shot and shield respectively, are a new type of laser known as the Ripple, which appears in the form of a row of isolated energy loops, and a force field which appears in the form of an energy aura. And be forewarned, the same shield withstanding stipulation applies. You know, you take several hits, it turns red, and then disappears following the final hit. Apart from scoring bonus points for extra lives, they also come in the form of a new power capsule that flashes blue and red simultaneously. When your ship gets trashed, that very same ship returns straight to the battle, hence not only in the form of a replacement, but in addition, the Contra-style auto-revival. Though the same penalties do apply here, you know, all weapons lost, except here you're given a chance to retrieve your option ore before it drifts out of existence. And thank God Konami did away with that checkpoint bullshit here, despite said forfeiture still applying in the other outings. Must I mention that the same 2-option limitation is also superseded here, whereas in the Japanese version you could obtain up to 3. What the fucking shit, Konami? And that you and your partner could share options in between each life? Instead of the usual horizontal scrolling stages, we're also introduced to vertical scrolling stages in the style of Namco Bandai's Galaxian and Galaga, Taito and Natsume's Pocky and Rocky, aka Kiki Kai Kai, and even another Konami classic, Axelay, which alternate in between, with the odd-numbered stages being the horizontals, and the even-numbered ones being the verticals respectively. Those stages are composed of not only the traditional space backgrounds, complete with asteroids, volcanic eruptions, your far from typical enemy base, and new to the lineup is a flame-permeated tube, Sega's Galaxy Force much? We're also introduced to a biological organic motif as Big Viper and or Lord British trick through the innards of various bodily areas, mostly in the cases of stages 1 and 4. Fantastic Voyage, or hell, Spielberg and Dante's Inner Space much? And even ancient Egyptian ruins, complete with a visit from King Tutankhamun, let alone his bastard poltergeist descendant, as its rightful boss no less. And speaking of the enemies, not only do the trademark enemy crafts, artillery, and moai heads return, even ones that appear as jumpers, there's also all new ones thrown into the mix, including random organic lifeforms, fiery phoenixes that appear in rows of 5, tapeworm dragons, even a gigantic version of said creature as the stage 3 boss, living nerve cells and synapses. I could go on for hours and hours and hours and hours and never get fucking exhausted even once. As for the supporting hazards, let's just say they've got way more than enough shit to make Christ damn sure your chances for survival are screwed beyond all fucking expectations. Colossal as fuck teeth, metallic craters, solar flares, high-speed areas, spinal fragments, stalactites, moving pillars and corridors, and don't even get me goddamn started with the following bosses either. Brain Golem, not to be confused with Geodude's final evolutionary stage after trading, a cycloptic tentacled brain. Citron, an expanded rendition of the big core enemy craft, complete with 4 metallic octopus-like arms. Giga, a massive-ass skull that spits out deadly energy orbs and pops out its eyes for additional assault. And of course, the Sovereign, ultimate organic lifeform hellbent on turning Latus, and maybe Gradius, into organic, irreversible Bacterion fortresses, and even puts Unicron from the '86 Transformers movie, voiced by the late Mr. Citizen Kane War of the Worlds himself, Orson Welles. It's a total godforsaken shame. The aforementioned Zelos Force, guarded by an extraterrestrial demon snake known as the Salamander, hence the earlier stated alternative Japanese title, the latter of which must be defeated in order to progress. And unless you eradicate the former via its central pupil, you have to restart a few levels back in comparison to the original arcade where you have to start the entire final stage from square fucking one, which in turn brings me to my next usual topic after more points yet to be addressed. Control-wise, they're the same as before, nothing short of receptive, despite some insufficient hindrances, and the customary gameplay procedure and schematics isn't too severe or discomforting, at least not by even a slight inkling. In terms of challenge, just like Gradius, Life Force never lets the fuck up as usual, and it'll keep your ass in line no matter how far you get, considering its protracted, perspective alternating 6-level length. As ever, various offbeat strategies apply for each boss, no matter what type it is, and your senses had better be on the ball and in tip-top shape every waking moment, otherwise your ass won't last very long. Oh shit no. You only get 3 lives, or 30 using the usual famous Contra code, first introduced in the preceding Gradius, for the full option/power-up perks, and also used in Gyrus, released that very same year, except in reverse, as mentioned in my Contra review. And of course, 3 continues. And there's no telling how high the chances can escalate that they'll be used up faster than even a week's pay, in the true fashion of what I like to call Konami simultaneous 2-player romps. Think of the aforementioned Contra, Monster in My Pocket, some Ninja Turtles games, and even Sunset Riders. If you and or your partner get a game over following your final life loss, you're given a chance to steal an extra life from the other at any given time. Talk about ruined friendships yet to transpire. But in the case of this and other earlier mentioned games that fall within said criteria, specifically the Konami simultaneous 2-player romps, who the hell even gives a shit? Graphically, it's much more refined and radiant this time around, despite the obvious, and once again, usual, slowdown occurrence due to having a crap ton of sprites on screen, as mentioned in my Wai World 2 review. Before I forget, notice how Nintendo is misspelled in the title screen. In other words, there's no O like there should be. I bet Konami was trying to do this so they could save memory. But then again, by now they should know better. And don't think by now I haven't noticed typos in other games either, including the infamous Bimmy and Jimmy typo in Double Dragon 3. Other than that, unnecessary harping aside, the stage elements and backgrounds aren't too much of a damn eyesore, while there might be others that most might find rather lacking and inaccurate. And once again, don't even get me started with those predatory bosses. Music and sound-wise, brilliantly composed and arranged by Shinya Sakamoto of Russian Attack, Jackal, Blades of Steel, and Nemesis fame, yet to be discussed. Satoe Terashima of Goonies 1 and 2, Castlevania aka Vampire Killer for the MSX, and King Kong Lives aka King Kong 2 fame, Hidenori Maezawa of Contra fame, and of course Atsushi Fujio of Blades of Steel and Bayou Billy fame, not to mention Falsion, Roller Games, Madara, Lagrange Point, and others, based on Higashino's original arcade soundtrack. The overall myriad of tracks here isn't half bad as ever, considering they've also recycled one familiar track from the first Gradius game, namely the usual boss theme. While most find that this game's songs turn out to be yet another mixed bag, they're all adequately arranged and featured to fit its overall myriad of atmospheres and moods. The sound effects, on the other hand, though some might find them annoying, they're still a myriad of ear pleasers as always. And as one could have expected, my top 5 favorites from this game alone are Power of Anger, Planet Latus, Burn the Wind, and Destroy 'Em All. That's stages 1, 3, 4, and 6 respectively. And finally, its signature boss theme, Poison of Snake. Replayability-wise, due to the traditional multitude of space combat attrition tactics, and the unbiased, albeit brutal difficulty, I don't see a single discrepancy whatsoever stemming from this outing, or why a single soul on this godforsaken planet should even pass this shit up. Besides, should you decide or intend to beat both Gradius and this game right here, their respective duration should come to not even a half hour, but then again, it could take more time depending on your survival tactics.
Next up, Gradius 2 for the Famicom, which never saw the light of day here, otherwise subtitled as Gopher's Ambition, Gopher no Yabo.
Story outline: compared to Life Force, which again was another spin-off, this right here actually continues the legacy of Vic Viper as it was intended to be, if in the case of the former, not directly. Just when we thought it'd be all over for Vic Viper and its never-ending bloodshed with a ruthless as fuck Bacterion empire, oh how mortifyingly misled we'd be. I know, talk about mind blown, right? This time around, the fearless commander and his rightful vessel sets out to once again stop not only their zealous onslaughts, but to single-handedly weed their menacing new bioorganic leader, Gopher, the fuck out. Gameplay-wise, it's yet again the same core procedure as the last 2 outings, except you're treated to selecting 4 assorted, pre-customized power meter arrangements at the start. Some of these include both the normal and ripple laser types, and even 2 types of double shots. The original 45-degree angle formation from the first game, and the tail gun, in which your regular shots are fired simultaneously from both the front of and behind both your ship, and 1 if more of your option orbs. As far as missile variations, not only is the regular missile contained within 1 of the meters, but there's even a spread bomb, the best missile weapon by far, that creates a mammoth-like explosion upon detonation after creating an arc pattern. A photon torpedo, which acts in almost the same manner as the regular missile, except it drops straight vertically out of your ship and or option orbs, thus coasting past various targets until it hits a perpetual surface. And a 2-way, which fires both missiles simultaneously, from both above and below your ship as well as your option orbs. Despite those obvious variations, all the meters are the same, and unlike the arcade version, otherwise released in Europe as Vulcan Venture, where you can pick either your shield and or force field, here you're only stuck with the latter perk, no matter which power meter you experiment with. Speaking of the options, remember the 2-orb limitation set forth in the previous installments? You can now not only summon up to 4 in this port, they can also be arranged in a temporary, full-powered Tour de Force loop-to-loop formation until they become isolated yet again. Consider this my final reiteration that the very same turn-based 2-player standard from the previous Gradius game, in other words the first, applies here, and so does the static horizontal scrolling stage standard of said previous outing. As far as level outlines, we're introduced to a supernova field filled with intruder fire dragons emanating from mini-suns, complete with a trademark Life Force Phoenix blocks of up to 8 this time around no less, and even the instant death solar flare arcs. A biological H.R. Geiger-inspired ruins area with fragile, fireable walls in the style of those diminutive as fuck pink dot barriers from the first Gradius game. Alien eggs, also used, let alone seen, in the Contra series. The usual bioorganic arm from Life Force, and even other various life forms. The frequent mountain wilderness area complete with the volcanic eruptions, followed by a crystalline asteroid field. Another Moai world. Seriously, how can any Gradius be complete without those semi-statuesque jackasses? Yet another mechanical complex, featuring the same high-speed chaos from Life Force, and other unexpected perils that await. And finally the central antagonist Biodomain, almost reminiscent of the first stage in Life Force. Getting to the impending ass bosses, the first one includes a giant phoenix sporting lasers and even fire breath volleys. A bizarre colossal as fuck big guy with arms, vulnerable when open, followed by the return of Giga, this time around with an indestructible fucking laser. An all new tentacled crystal core, known as Icy Icy, or Ice Ice. 2 new types of Moai, the same single jumper from Life Force, and even 3 giant Moai heads glued onto a wall, a ceiling, and a floor respectively. Defeat either one of them, all of them are wiped out. Oh, and here's the old shot of the cannon. Following the aforementioned 4th stage is an epic beyond all means of fucking fantasy boss parade, and the first to be introduced within the goddamn franchise no less. Consisting of not only the trademark enemy onslaughts and the big core, it even includes reunion-style bosses from Life Force, the customary Golem, Tetran, this time around with high-speed tentacles, and even the Zelos Force, minus its guarding pet Demon Snake Salamander, and with a fucking seizure-inducing thunder and lightning assault to top it all off. And to meet that very same goal, an exclusive as hell covered core Mark 1, sporting 3 fan-like shields and a flurry of missiles, 10 total to be precise, half above and half below, that fire in a 90-degree pattern and home in on your ship. But that's not all that'll keep your goddamn adrenaline pumping beyond belief. Oh fucking shit no. In the aforementioned final 2 stages, you'll also face deteriorating ceiling and floor fragments, followed by a near impenetrable core in the form of a gun wall, known as Demos, complete with 2 hatches that summon mini-walkers, top and bottom respectively. A towering 6-armed mechanical walker, Crab, will distract the fuck out of you to no foreseeable end. And finally, the preceding, menacing, bioorganic, shit-spewing motherfucker, Gopher. Bottom line, unless you're top of the heap, survival savvy, and on your guard, memorizing every pattern imaginable, this host of perils will dominate your ass like Shao Kahn dominating Outworld. And it's like the game's telling you,
it's official. You suck.
Nerve-curdling suspense aside, the gameplay controls will make you feel at home like never before if you're familiar enough with both aspects. In other words, they are in no way convoluted whatsoever. As far as Gradius 2's challenge, it's way more relentless, albeit well balanced, compared to the last 2 outings. If you will, please refer back to my statement of advice given for Life Force. Aside from the earlier stated host of bosses, and even those scorching solar flare arcs, there's way more hazards and random enemy onslaughts for which to keep a close eye peeled for than one could possibly fathom, which will do way more than macerate the fuck out of your cerebral functioning, like Toad's human to Goomba de-evolution in the live-action Super Mario Bros. Film. You only get the customary 3 lives, more of which you can accumulate upon scoring every 30,000 points, in comparison to the original arcade stipulation. And to be specific, your first extra life is awarded upon scoring the first 30,000, and every one thereafter upon scoring multiples of 70,000, and 3 continues. And if you conserve them wisely in between each chain of stages, there's no way in fuck you'll be sailing up Pissing Shit's Creek without a paddle. Anyhow, the same strategy case applies here from the first 2 outings. The graphics here are magnificent and well enriched beyond all description factors, thanks to the special VRC4 chip Konami equipped the game with, kinda like what they did with Contra. Shit, it also goes without even so much as specifying that it never saw the light of day here in the US, despite being featured in issues 2 and 3 of EGM, Electronic Gaming Monthly if you will, published for June and July 1989, and even August and September of 1989, respectively. One reason amongst many was mostly due to Nintendo of America's usual financial and third-party annual 5-title release limitations. Though, as you're already aware by now, Konami did establish a shell subsidiary, Ultra Software Corporation, as mentioned in my Turtles review, to skirt their way around the ladder pit stop. Once again, what the fuck? Brief history lesson aside, the visuals never cease to amaze even the most curious retro addicts, yours truly included, regardless of which country they hail from. The central stage elements, background and foreground, have even been improved trillion-fold upon, as of their reigning boss appearances. Seriously, they make the Dark Overlord of the universe from Howard the Duck, and even the Ed 209 from RoboCop look like Louis Tully and Old 3PO respectively. God damn it, must I go on any further? Orchestrated and arranged magnificently by the combined efforts of Hidenori Maezawa and Yukie Morimoto, based on Shinji Tsusaka, Motoaki Furukawa, Kenichi Matsubara, and Teiichi Fukami's original arcade soundtrack, the top-notch 2A03 musical compositions never fail to astonish us every waking moment and are definitely headbang-worthy. And neither do the goddamn sound effects, complete this time around with Delta Pulse Code modulated sound bites in the true fashion of the aforementioned Blades of Steel, Bayou Billy, and Top Gun The Second Mission, in terms of the differentiating power meter benefits announced every time you activate them, and I'd listen to those very carefully. Same with the final boss's somehow indecipherable as shit speech. And here are thoughts at the most infamous goddamn use of digitized sampling. And lastly, as far as Gradius 2's replayability, yet again, go back to what I mentioned about the lasting value of the previous 2 installments. Otherwise, it ramps up another notch or so in comparison, predominantly by reason of the 4 alternating power meters you're able to experiment with in between each play, and our continuation opportunity. And for the record, before I forget, since it's a Japan-only Famicom game, like Samurai Pizza Cats by Tecmo, or YY World 1 and 2, there's no way in hell that this pointer should be stressed any larger. A direct-to-NES converter is highly fucking required.
And then we have the Gradius Game Boy spin-offs, Nemesis and Gradius the Interstellar Assault, both released 1990 and 91 respectively.
Oh joy, what would one possibly expect but another spin-off? And being that this is the only Gradius game released globally to use its European equivalent's alternate title, and for those wondering, for the record, the title has absolutely nothing to do with the third fucking Resident Evil game, or the 10th goddamn Star Trek film. This is also that other iteration I recounted at the beginning, in which your main ship isn't the Vic Viper, despite your main ship resembling it, but the unstoppable Parodius 911, piloted by the chief of the Interplanetary Police in service of said outfit, and it's embarking throughout the cosmos for one lone reason: to settle a long overdue score with the notorious King Nemesis and his impenetrable slew of defenses. Gameplay-wise, the core uniform mechanics of the classic Gradius returns here. The same rudimentary power meter / capsule system has been recycled, except you can advance your vessel's speed up to 3 times, and you're allowed to summon up to only 2 options here. And since it's a Game Boy game, same with Interstellar Assault, which yet again, I will discuss momentarily. The difference in power capsule design applies here to set the usual 2 types apart. In other words, the latter is feasible for vanquishing the ever-loving shit out of every enemy in plain sight. In true Ninja Turtles Fall of the Foot Clan fashion, not only are you able to kick things off by customizing your button setup, B and/or A can either fire your trademark weapons, or activate your desired power meter item, and/or vice versa, but also which stage you want to start at. Be forewarned, however, you have to start at stage 1 to see the real ending. Make no mistake, otherwise you'll start back from there after you've trained yourself to beat the entire game when you started off in a different stage. How many lives, or ships in this case, you want to start off with? Between 0 all the way up to an unprecedented 99. Talk about endless fucking possibilities. And even the choice of having your auto shot capabilities, or rapid fire if you will, enabled or disabled. Should your vessel get totaled at any time, the usual checkpoint system from the first 2 outings applies, with the exception of life force, following your current status. And how can we possibly forget the usual slap in the face enhancement loss penalty? In terms of stage lineup, you've got your signature mountain / volcanic wilderness, Easter Island, aka Moai if you will, and final fortress areas, complete with the recycled alien-like fortress ruins from the second game, and an exclusive prehistoric world with living fossilized beast heads to boot. Hell, even the signature bosses make their return, the big core craft following the volcanic eruption, along with the respawning Zub Onslaught. And to be precise, they're the only boss, not to mention the myriad of onslaughts, to fit said criteria tragically, mixed with newer adversaries, like those needle crafts where if you get anywhere near them, they'll start wiggling for a bit and then ram the fuck out of your ship. Getting back to the lineups for the new bosses, it ranges from a spiked, bony cycloptic lifeform known as the Crawler, a collection of 4 attack orbs that fuse into a bulbous, not to be fucked with rendition of said orbs, and then back to their initial form, hence their name, Maru Maru, followed by another once derelict, intrepid attack craft, the Striker, a squadron of umbrella-like Iron Maiden Mark II attack ships, not to be confused with the Metal Band, followed by a towering base complete with not only the trademark core, but with rotating attack orbs and white missiles that fire from below, and finally an all-new gunwall type known as the Mother Computer Z. And I swear to Christ almighty, unless you're up to snuff and that every vital stage and boss pattern is memorized by at least the halfway point, especially when it comes to the enemy and hazard evasions, your ass will be left senseless, complete with a goddamn all expenses paid trip to hell in a fucking handbasket. Beyond that, the control mechanics and gameplay gimmick, as one could possibly expect, aren't too much of a bastard to acquaint oneself with, nor are they overly mundane. Challenge-wise, thanks to the limitless possibilities that the opening configuration settings provide, including the 2 given difficulty levels, it can be either a fuck-all milk run, or just flat out impossible as Arcadia's Silver Surfer and Capcom's Ghosts and Goblins combined. In the case of the former, namely the whole milk run trip, you shouldn't have too much trouble starting from the get-go with at least 3 to 5 lives, if maybe more. And must I mention that the same once per game full options code, yes, the same code command used for 30 lives in other Konami classics, applies here? Refer back to what I mentioned in Life Force. And before I forget, there's no fucking continue opportunity here. Plain and condensed as the graphics appear to be, they're far from abhorrent, especially with the uncommon as hell parallax scrolling in Stage 1. The customary foreground and background aesthetics were ambitious, even for an early portable game from 1990. Hell, even pushing said portable to its absolute limits nonetheless, despite the uneven, ruptured, and out of touch in-game frame rate. Again, it's like in Fall of the Foot Clan, released the exact same friggin' year. Also, notice how your vessel's frame is stationary unlike the console versions. In other words, it doesn't rotate vertically showing its top or bottom views, despite its supporting option orbs still pulsating like they usually do. And don't even get me fucking started with those impending ass bosses. In terms of music and sound for Nemesis, composed by Michiru Yamane, yes, the same lady who also helped to compose for various other Konami games, and even Skullgirls, refer back to my Fall of the Foot Clan review, alongside the aforementioned Shinya Sakamoto, refer back to Life Force, as well as Yuji Takenouchi, otherwise known as Techno-Uchi, of course for the MSX, X-Men Arcade, and Mystic Warriors fame, and even Tomoya Tomita of Turtles 3 The Manhattan Project, the infamous Contra Force, otherwise known as the recently scrapped Archound, and even Animaniacs for the Super NES fame, not to mention the soon-to-be-discussed Parodius Famicom port, and even the Super Famicom edition of Parodius 3, Jikyo Oshaveri Parodius. Apart from the trademark songs, especially the hybrid medley of stages 1 and 4 from the first Gradius game, several new exclusive tracks are thrown in for the sake of introducing those all-new worlds. The sound effects could have used more tweaking, but it's no blunder nonetheless. My personal favorites from this game alone are all stages except for the first, and boss themes 2 and 3. And must I mention that some of these tracks are not only recycled from the second Gradius game, and even Nemesis 2 on MSX, they're also heard as tributes on Captain N the Game Master, produced by Deke. Concerning Nemesis replayability, if you will, refer back to the opening configuration settings since it ties in very closely with said department. And once again, before I forget, there's even bonus areas, unlockable via hidden areas within participating stages. Otherwise, all in all, you'll be yearning for more regarding this and the next portable outing, if maybe not as much as their console siblings, like your dear life depended on it all. Once again, in terms of plot, just when we thought it'd be all over for our gallant vessel, those Bacterion cockknockers don't know when the fuck to quit, do they? Considering the massive lines of defense with which they're now equipped. Also, quoting Top Gun, directed by the late Tony Scott no less, those douchebags are better off flying a cargo plane full of rubber dog shit out of Hong Kong. Anyways, good old Vic Viper is back for yet another slew of interplanetary confrontations like never before. As expected, the gameplay's ditto, just like every other goddamn Gradius game discussed so far, except for picking out 3 diverse missile, double, and laser types at the start, specifically normal two-way and tail, normal twin and tail, and normal twin and ripple respectively, or practicing one of the first 4 of the overall 5 to 6 main stages, hence that alternate mode provided at the beginning. Unlike every other Gradius installment, however, there's hints of continuity that take place between stages. In terms of both stage outline and boss lineup, a chase between both your vessel and a big core variation ensues, leading to a scene in the historic ruin-filled caverns, featuring an impending beyond belief, Geiger-inspired monstrosity of a statue, followed by an unexpected capture by a remote enemy core ship, whose pernicious, defense-infused reactor located within its interior must be destroyed, leading to more galactic combat occurrences, and finally segueing into a last resort planetary retreat, and eventually a final, no-turning-back confrontation within the enemy base. Talk about a mind-boggling yet astonishing far cry from its predecessor. The controls, notwithstanding its trifle faults, are still a cinch to accustom oneself with, and the gameplay still remains intact, considering the drastic change this particular outing underwent by comparison. Concerning Interstellar Assault's challenge, despite its short length, I wouldn't even go so far as to expect much of a cake-walkathon with this installment. As ever, if you're not up to snuff, or at the very least, wary and cautious of every source of liability and peril out there, expect to have your vessel and or your ass eradicated beyond repair time and time again. You only get a somewhat fair yet appalling 2 lives and a semi-finite continuation opportunity via either the start and select buttons feasible for carrying out said command, or ending the game on the spot singularly. Notwithstanding the fact that the graphics are on the same level as its predecessor, the visuals here are much more intense and fortified as opposed to Nemesis. In addition to the customary choppy frame rate, the semi-existent background details and lack of animation on your main vessel, there exists a case of flicker on its supporting elements, for example its signature firepower and option orbs. Also, as much as I swore myself that I'd avoid over-harping on any lacking details, where the ever-loving fuck are the goddamn Easter Island heads? This game's original soundtrack, arranged brilliantly by Yoshiyuki Hagiwara, aka Hagi, of Mission Impossible for the NES fame, under his alias Hygiene, Batman the Animated Series on Game Boy, alongside the next composer to be mentioned, Tiny Toon Adventures 2 Trouble in Wacky Land for the NES, and others, Yuko Kurahashi of Turtles 2 Back from the Sewers on Game Boy fame, along with Bio-Miracle Bokute Upo for the Famicom, Minako Matsuhiro of Turtles 3 Radical Rescue, and Tiny Toons Wacky Sports on Game Boy fame, and even Sparkster for the Super NES, and an unknown Yansan, God knows who the hell he or she is more ominous and valiant this time around, making even Hirokazu Hip Tanaka's compositions seem like a dull-ass nursery rhyme song. The sound effects are on the up and up as expected, an unabashed understatement, yes, but for Pete's sakes, I've got my goddamn limits too! My top 5 favorites from this game alone are as follows: Majesty, the weapon select, which I've seen lots of folks confuse for the title screen theme, which isn't played at the actual title screen, oh F no. Both the Ruins and Toadstool, the second and third parts of Stage 1 respectively, and Revolve and Odd Planet, the second boss theme and the fourth stage respectively. Lastly, for Interstellar Assault's replayability, cranked up yet another notch or two from the previous portable installment. It's one galactic, mind-blowing, thrill-a-minute, out-of-this-goddamn-universe expedition like no other, especially with its transitional details that occur stage to stage and that'll keep you guessing to the very end. Bottom line, consider yourself insane to pass up both of them, if at least either.